Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. It's the first day of school for most public school students across our state, including over in Durham Public Schools. Tuesday will be the first day for Wake County Public School students. WRAL is your back-to-school headquarters, and we've been reporting on the big things you need to know about this school year. WRAL Education Insider Emily Walkenhorst is in the studio with me to cover some of the biggest topics we're following, and many of those are some big changes in Wake County schools, right, Emily?
Right. I've covered several changes this week from school bus systems and apps and whatnot.
Yeah. And let's start with school buses because there's several different things that change there. So what are some new things that students ride the buses need to know about this school year?
So a few things are going to be different. So first of all, if you have the Here Comes the Bus app, that's the app that tells you how close the bus is, when the bus is in, a certain location near your house. That doesn't provide information to you directly on delays. You might get a phone call or have to look at a website to find out if the bus is delayed or just not coming. Now you'll be able to get that from an email or text message. You should make sure that your contact information is up to date in the Power School system to make sure that you're able to actually get those emails and text messages. So that's one thing that's changing with buses. We've also covered a possible ID program where students they'd get an ID, it'd have a barcode on it, and they would scan it to get on and off the bus. That way, you can keep track of students' whereabouts, make sure they didn't get on the wrong bus without permission, things like that. That is not rolling out just yet, but we did get an update this week saying that is coming. So if you saw our previous coverage on that and you were wondering what the deal with that was, they're still planning on doing it in Wake County schools. It's just not ready yet.
Got it. And then it's also, I know, been an issue the last couple of years, staffing these bus routes. I know there was an issue last year where a lot of the routes were routinely showing up. They were scheduled to show up after school started. What's the status on the school bus driver shortage and the arrival times of those buses at school?
So a few things are different. There is some good news. So last year, if you'll recall, and like you alluded to, the district started out with a bunch of routes, and they actually couldn't hire enough full-time drivers to staff them, not even to mention substitute drivers that they might have needed. So essentially, they had to provide some leeway at the beginning of the year where they were like, okay, well, we'll still get kids to these schools, but we're going to have to call on some other drivers to do an extra route. So these kids are going to be late to school or they're going to arrive just as the bell is ringing. So that was a situation last year at a couple dozen schools, just a handful of students at each school, but it added up to quite a few students district-wide. They are not doing that this year. They were able to, basically what they did is they shrunk the number of routes. They were actually able to hire more bus drivers than they had last year as well. So they're in a decent position. They still don't have enough substitute drivers. If, let's say, wintertime comes, the flu season starts soon, bus drivers call out, their kids are sick. So the bus driver themselves isn't sick, but their kid is. They have to stay home. You could end up with a situation where there aren't enough substitutes to cover every route. We do know that, some people who work in the transportation department aren't even, really full-time bus drivers are ready to cover shifts if they need to.
A little bit of a better score this year on bus staffing, but not an A+ by any means yet.
Right. And the beginning of every school year has the potential for hiccups, because there are new drivers, there are new routes, students going to different schools, students might be getting picked up at different places. There's always an opportunity for a lot of hiccups. So every year the school system urges patience. They're doing the same this year, saying, please be patient with us.
Right. And, parents can download that Here's the Bus app and at least kind of have a little bit better idea of what the bus tracking is going to be. Mm-hmm. And that's not the only new app this school year. There's also the Say Something app, which is new in Wake County, but almost all North Carolina districts have it already. So what is it and how is that going to be used?
So the Say Something app has been used by school districts in North Carolina and even beyond. Thousands of districts across the country have been using it for several years now. Basically, it collects anonymous tips related to school safety or security. So the school system already had like a phone number you could call if you wanted to submit a tip anonymously. If you thought, this student has been bullying this other student, or I think the student might hurt themselves, you can call that in. Now you can use an app. So it might actually be a little bit easier. It's going to come with some training for some students. They're still rolling that out, especially for younger grades. They haven't necessarily scheduled a time for when they'll be trained on how to use the app. But some of the training is also going to come with how to spot concerning behaviors, things like that. And we know that the way it's been used elsewhere in North Carolina, schools might get thousands of tips collectively over the course of a school year. And a lot of those are going to be related to bullying, harassment, self-harm, suicide ideation, and even drug use. The thing we always think about is, a planned school attack. That's a really big deal. That's a very small percentage of overall tips. It's still a great way to report a concern like that. But one benefit of this app is you're actually catching a lot of more routine, everyday safety concerns.
Gotcha. All right, let's take a quick break right there, and we'll be right back. So, Emily, school lunch prices are up in Wake County, but which schools are going to be able to offer relief to some of the students here in this district and in others in our area?
Right. So Wake County, for the third year in a row, raised their lunch and breakfast prices. That's a pretty big deal. I mean that could be hundreds of dollars in a year if you're just looking at all three of those years added together. But there is some good news for about 41 schools. So that's a fifth of all schools. They're going to have free breakfast and lunch for all students next year, so regardless of income. And that's basically comes through a federal program. The USDA offers it, called Community Eligibility Provision. And essentially what it is they're saying, okay, your school demographically has a lot of really high-need students who are going to qualify for this program. It's easier if we just make all meals just free at this school. We don't make people fill out paperwork, things like that, because a lot of people don't fill out the paperwork.
Right.
And, maybe because they don't know about the program. Some people, they just don't want it. They're like, they're modest about it. Our family doesn't want to use this program. But some of them might just, their kid didn't bring the paperwork home, and there's a lot of back and forth. So it's just easier to offer, these free meals. So that's going to be at 41 schools. There's another 6 schools that are going to have free breakfast for all students, but not free lunch.
Okay. All right. And I'm sure people can find that list on our website if they want to see if their kid's school qualifies. WRAL leading up to this school year has been doing some surveys of people and parents and their top issues for public education. What were the results of that survey?
Right. So I've been working with Chris Levengood. He's one of our anchors and reporters here at WRAL. We created a survey. We essentially just kind of wanted to, get the temperature in North Carolina of feelings toward public schools. So we did that. A big reason we did that was because it's an election year, and
Right.
we wanted our audience to kind of feel like they could participate in election coverage. I mean, they participate when they vote.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to just get a sense from them of, okay, what questions should we be asking? What are the big issues for you that influence how you plan to vote? We wanted to kind of bring people into this process and say, hey, help us figure out, help us ask the questions that you need answered to help you vote. So that's what we asked. We try to keep it to just a few basic questions to make sure people really filled it out. And we got, a mix of people. So they're parents, grandparents, concerned citizens who don't have kids, maybe yet, or just, they might be volunteers in a school. So we got a mix of a lot of those people, a lot of people from Wake County, of course, to be expected. It's non-scientific, but But we did ask some information from people to help us kind of figure out, okay, well, this is mostly people in Wake County filling out. It was actually, was not quite most people in Wake County. And essentially, they said teacher pay was a really big deal. They were concerned about school funding, resources for schools. Those were really the two main things. Teacher pay was the biggest one. Not quite half of people said that was their top issue. School funding was maybe more like 1/5 of people said it was their biggest issue. Again, the results are non-scientific, but something that's important to note is when scientific polls have been taken of people before, they did identify, teacher pay and school resources as being things they had very clear opinions on. They did not believe, generally speaking, people did not believe that schools were adequately funded, or they did not believe that teachers earn enough money. Maybe the question wasn't in the form of, is that your number one issue? But the question was, how do you feel about these things? And they overwhelmingly have said in previous polling that they believed those things were insufficient. So that kind of gives us some kind of gauge going forward of, these are still important issues for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I was reading through all that information that you guys were able to gather with that survey, and it's really interesting, the different results. There's so many different layers to it. And of course, people can find that over on our website, WRAL.com, along with all of our back to school coverage. Thank you so much, Emily, for being here. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email that's waiting in your inbox every morning with local news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.